we are starting. I know that there is currently no one, but this is for recording purposes. So we have some documentation that you should already have access to on the shared link and shared drive, with videos that show the machines in use, the machines we're going to use, whereas in this workshop, it's more of a focus on the software side of things and actually designing the art or the pieces that we are using. In this case, the 3D printing and how to use like a 3D software to design that. And then Inkscape is what we use for laser cutting and how to draw the path that the laser will follow. And then also some embroidery or some heat transfer vinyl done with either Stitch Era or with a silhouette cameo. So you can see the screen, right? Yeah. Like the video, the internet. Okay. So then in Tinkercad, which is an Autodesk thing, it's very, very easy. You I believe, can create free accounts with them. It's very easy to use 3D software. So if you just create a new design, they always give you cool names. Okay, so you can always rename this. I'm just clicking on it. We're going to rename this as the bead. So through that, just minimize this. Through that, you have all your shapes here that you can use. And in order to create a bead, it's quite simple, depending on the shape of bead you want to use. Tube can be good. For this case, for this one, to make it simple, I would do a tube. But you can also do a lot easier, a lot different shapes like a heart or whatever. I'll do a heart as well, just because. So to start, when you look at looking at your tube, you can hear me, right? You can change the inner diameter, I believe. Increasing the wall thickness. My radius is currently 10 millimeters, so if I do a wall thickness of 6, it gives me a 4 millimeter hole. Should be big enough for passing thread. Oops. At 6.5 there, and that way you have a very basic but still square-edged bead. And then you can also take a heart bead, and in this case, if you want to run a hole through it, typically for a bead this way, one second, you're going to want to rotate this way, no, this way, there. And then you can easily use the hole function for cylinder, and then resize it to 4. Not what I wanted to do. And then if you move it to the top, if you move it here, it's not tall enough, but if you move it there, it'll cut a hole through, through the bead or through the heart to make a place for the thread to pass through. Somewhere like that would be nice. That way your bead will hang more like on the heart right side up. That's right. Ok. Donc, pour le répéter en français, on utilise Tinkercad. C'est un logiciel en ligne, gratuit, très facile à utiliser. Et dans ce tutoriel, on va créer une bille qu'on va coudre sur le sac. Dans ce cas, j'en ai créé un, juste un cylindre simple avec un trou. Après ça, un cœur, mais vous pouvez vraiment créer n'importe quoi. Donc, pour le cœur, créer le trou, il faut juste utiliser le cylindre, mais le vide Et dans ce cas-là, j'ai créé un trou de 4 mm qui passe à travers de ce côté-là. So that way, oops, just gonna, one sec. Yeah. So that way it's very easy to create these, and you can create a whole bunch. We have already created some. I don't know if I have any near me, but I don't think so. But we created a few different shapes as well as just generic round ones. And if you get them in different colors, or sorry, different shapes, like a star with a little smiley face and the hole that passes through it through the top, they're very, very small, very easy to print, and then just basic ones. And in this case, they're printed in a beige color so that they are easy to be painted into whichever color you want. But you can also print it in different colors. Donc dans ce cas, on s'imprimait dans une couleur beige. Ici, j'ai une étoile. Juste une bille régulière. Ils sont imprimés dans cette couleur parce qu'après ça, on peut les peinturer ou on peut l'imprimer avec un filament d'une autre couleur. All right, so I'm not talking about, okay. And then in this, and then in Tinkercad, once you have your design done like that, you can always also group, oops, these two by pressing Shift. That way it creates one item like that with the hole all the way through it, although I can't see through it. There we go. And it only has to be big enough for your thread. And then with a file like that, very easy. You can just take this file straight and just click import. Sorry, not import. Export, and that way you export to an STL so that it can be easily printed in for the 3D printer. Donc pour exporter et pour l'utiliser avec l'imprimante 3D, il faut juste cliquer ici. Après ça, on peut le télécharger en format STL. So from there, oops. Whoops. Oh, I don't know how to change my screen. Okay, perfect. From there, because we're using an Ultimaker as a 3D printer, you have to use their software Cura. Very easy to use, but it prepares it specifically for their machines. I'm just waiting on that to open. Okay, that did not work. There we go. It's coming. There we go. All right. All right. So in Cura here, let's see how I can share the screen. This one here. Perfect. So there in Cura. Okay, so in Cura, then you can easily open files In this case, I'll just click on the folder. Donc, on va utiliser le logiciel Cura, vu qu'on utilise un Ultimaker comme imprimante 3D. Après ça, il faut juste ouvrir le fichier avec le bouton ici qui rentre un dossier. Now, to find the folder, I don't know where I downloaded it, a bead example right here. If we open it, there I have a heart that showed up. In this case, this is maybe not the best orientation for it. So in Cura, you can always edit these things very easily. And by rotating it, you always want to have the flat surface or a flat surface on the bottom, because that way you won't need to put as many supports and your print won't collapse or say fail as it's going. But you can even see underneath, it'll show the correct color for what's touching the build plate. And then from there, you can always edit some of the settings in terms of quality, travel speed, and all that. For this one, I'm mostly just going to deal with the density. And I will, whoops, because it's very small, it won't take long anyway. But just always make sure that in this case, we have a printer with two print heads. Just make sure you have the correct material selected. In this case, we're just using PLA, and always have to check your printer for the right nozzle size. So in this case, I believe I have a 0.4. I'm just going to check. And I have a 0.4. All right, so. So this one, I usually, whoops, I'm going to change the density. I'll just put it at 10. Okay. You can change the infill pattern for the most part. Triangles is pretty basic. I use the gyroid one just because it's kind of cool, but in the end, it should not change the print time that much. And then print speed, it usually sets automatically for the material being used, so you can just leave it at that. And in this case, I don't need to generate any supports because the hole on the inside is small enough that it will not be affected, and it is on the flattest surface. All right, and then once that is done and ready, you can just click slice. Mm-hmm. 49 minutes. I am going to see what the size is here because this is a little bit long for such an item. Scale, currently at 28. I will shrink that to 10. 10 millimeter, 1 centimeter, yeah, that'll be big enough. And we'll slice it again. Oh, perfect, 5 minutes. So just once you're ready to send it, whoops, typically on a USB because it's a lot easier, although the printers can be connected through Wi-Fi. It's easier to just plug a USB in. Just clicks there, it detects it automatically, and then can tell you to eject it. And you're good to go on the printer. So let's see here. Oops. Yeah. How do you do that?
The participants, I think.
Oh, yes. All right. Okay. I don't know it can be seen, but anyway, this can be also seen on the videos that you guys have access to on the shared documentation and videos. So it's pretty simple. When you plug in the USB, it'll just have print, material, and then maintenance. I believe the third print, maintenance, and anyway, there's three options. You just want to click on the print one, and then it'll show up your files that you just created. And the most recent one, the one you're trying to print, will show up at the top, and it'll say recent. And then you just click on that, and the print will start. And the printer has to just warm up the build plate. Takes a few minutes for it to start, and then the print will go. So in the meantime, we can see the video that we have already created that shows the print. If you may or may not have already seen it, I don't know.
Talk about what's going on.
Yeah, sorry. Oops. There we go.
Specifically, these are the ones that were created.
Yeah, so the beads that I showed just a minute ago that we printed is actually the one that is currently being printed, the little star and an oval one with our logo. And then about 5 of them were being printed at one time, as you can see in the video. And it's just a time lapse showing how the print goes. But for the most part, the print's pretty straightforward. The printer just prints it and you watch it as it goes. Some prints take a lot of time, but in this case, these ones were under 30 minutes, so quite quick to do for such a small piece. And if ever you want to just go over these videos or see any other videos that we have already created for the machines being used, they do exist in the drive. There is a link to that. It should have been shared, I'm not sure, but I will post it again. All right. So now, in order to do the laser cut that we have and to get the bag, so just as an example, this is one example of the bag. It is an oval, kind of, not really an oval, a rectangle with rounded corners. So basically you have two pieces. You have this one longer piece, well, two pieces for that, as well as a shorter piece, which would just be the one front, and then they will all be sewn together with a strip passing underneath. So all of these pieces, except for the strip underneath, I believe for being too long, as well as the strap not being laser cut because it's too long for the machine we have. If you have a machine long enough, you can always do that. But just cutting the shape that we need here to create our bag, and also twice because there's a lining inside and then the outside fabric. So with Inkscape, which is a pretty easy to use software, this is what it looks like when it's open. And I will just click on New Document. I will just have to share again. This one here. There we go. So there, we're just creating a new document, creating the cut that we want to use. So in this case, I'm going to first just create a rectangle. There may be an easier way to do this. I'm going to do it this way. Oops. From there, I should be able to, round. Not what I want to do. That is. Oops. There we go, round the corners. This. And then from there, if you, you can easily set, I just click on this one, select it, and you can easily dimension it to the size you want. In this case, I'm just going to create any random size, but I mean anything close for a bag. Probably the height being, we'll say 20 centimeters or 200 millimeters. Yeah, that'd be a good width. And then I'll say 30 for the depth. So we'll do 300. Oops. And it is moving away. Let's see. Just zoom out here. We'll get back into this. So you always set your dimensions, like this picture or this frame that I'm working in is the dimensions of my document. And you can easily change that by just going into document properties, and you just change the dimensions of it. In this case, it's just set to an A4 sheet of paper. And with that, you can set it to dimensions that you want exactly. Like sometimes you might want to set that to the size of your laser cutter, your machine, so that way you know exactly what you can fit in there or not. In this case, I'll just leave it at the paper size. But in the machine, it'll be oriented in the same way that is here. So for this part, our machine is actually a rectangle, but longer in the X axis than it is in Y. So your cut would most likely fit better having it rotated. So you can just, if you click a second time on the item, it will rotate. And if you hold shift, it will lock at angles of control. There we go, if you hold control, there we go. Now for our case, we use a Trotec Speedy 300 as our laser cutter. It may be different depending on different machines. I know other machines, it depends on the width or the size of your line that you just drew to for the cut or not. But for this one, you want to go into your fill and stroke, and that will for this machine, in order to have it a cut line, you need it to be red, and if it is a if it is black, it will just engrave it. So in this case, I believe it's 255 will give you the red that you're looking for. It has to be exactly that, and the machine will read that as a cut. In this case, I don't want any fill. Otherwise, well, I just want to cut around. I do not want to cut entirely through the piece. Okay, so at this step, oh my God, I did not. At this point, we're looking at an example in a case of how the bag would look for one piece that you may want to use. This one being one side and the flap over, can be done many different ways. This is how, for the shape exactly the bag we have, it's been done. So now from this step, you just have to save your file and as an Inkscape file, because when you go to, not on this computer that I'm currently on, but on a computer attached to your laser cutter, you kind of just pretend like you're printing a piece of paper, like you're printing this image, and then it'll open up the, so if you just if you just go into file print, it'll open up information. And because you have the software for your laser cutter on that computer, it brings you in, it can bring you into that to print it with the laser cutter, because it pretty much works as a printer, because it can engrave things and also it cuts, but pretty much like a printer. So at this point, I guess we'll show the video for laser cutting, because then we can do it live. We can do live how to do on laser cutting. So it'll switch from me to another screen.
So stop sharing.
We already have our material.
One sec. Needs to stop sharing. Kelly needs to
There. I will mute for a moment.
Okay, so our material today is deer leather, and we're going to cut a fringe out of it. So we already have the file ready to go. So I just need to get it centered into the machine. All right, the material's there. Next, the engraver. Now, please see the cut design here. I'll take a look at the cut design. So the red lines are cut by the laser. There are paths that it will follow. Now everything's good to go, and now that it's centered, I press play. The laser cutter is one of my personal favorite machines to use when doing cultural works, since they can easily be replaced without supplanting the tools that are traditionally used in our art styles. So here, instead of drawing out and cutting with a knife, we just put it into the machine and it cuts our files for us. Very efficient.
There we go. So now we're going to move on to just the vinyl, or the heat transfer vinyl in this case. Now, it's already cut, but typically you would use Silhouette Cameo because we have, sorry, Silhouette Studio because we have a Silhouette Cameo as a machine that we use. In this case, these are the ones that are already printed, or already cut. But basically, there's like a knife in the machine that just does around the contour of your design, and then you just peel off all the excess stuff, and then it's ready to be heated on with an iron. In this case, or you can use a heat press, but if it's small enough, you don't really need to use the heat press. So in this case, I'm just going to show, typically you could draw your own design in any software you want, or find an image on the internet or whatever. And you can just easily open a file. So in this case, I have an arrow. Say we wanted to put that heated onto a shirt. The software will detect already the cut that it needs to make. So I don't know if you can see, but you can sort of see, whoops, around that, well, no, I'm trying to do that it is red around the black, and that is showing you where it's going to cut. So in here, you can kind of move it around, do a few different, rotate it, few different things. You can actually work with all the nodes if you need to, draw lines, draw squares. You can also draw freehand, also add words. You can do a whole bunch of things with Cura, as well as a knife tool, which basically just cuts through it. But in this case, we don't want to cut through things. That's very handy for letters and ensuring that your letters, if you have, or any place that you have like a piece that might be in the middle and might be at risk of falling off when you're like separating, then you can use that tool. So in this case, once you're through the design, if you see up here on the top right, there's design, store, library, and send. Not too sure what store and library are. Oh, probably you can buy things and some existing library of designs. Anyway, in design, you can do all the modifications you need. In this case, I'm not going to do very many and not spend too much time on this, but you just go to send. And then here it is showing you where it's going to cut, which is the red. Typically, you would want to have it in a spot that would waste the least amount of material, so up in the corner. And then when the machine is detected, it'll show up here. You'll have a few settings for the different power and stuff you want to use. Usually that depends on the material you're using. You can always do a test cut prior to that just to make sure. But for our purposes here, I'm not going to continue much further because, oops, I already have them here cut and needed. And it's a little bit of it is shown in how the machine actually, when the machine's actually cutting the material, that's shown in the videos that we have, that you guys have access to. Close this. Oh, yeah, so I'm just going to share my screen again. All right, so this software is called Stitch Era. It's a paid software in this case, but we are going to use it to do some embroidery. Just as an example, in this case, an embroidery patch that can later be stuck onto the fabric of the bag. All right, so as an example, this is actually a really nice one. So, whoops, feathers. And on the back is just a, whoops. There's a sticky material or a heat on material. I think it's called heat and stick, anyway. Heat and bond, that's the one. So you can just remove the paper, and then kind of like the heat transfer vinyl, it'll be heated onto your bag in the same sense, but you first had to add the heat and bond to the back of the embroidered design. So in this case, you can open your pre-existing file that you've already designed in another software. It's easier than drawing it in the actual Stitch Era program, but I just find it on my computer. Okay, I'm just going to go blank document. And I will, whoop. Open an image, and I want to do, whoops, a heart in this case. All right. So there I have a heart open. Oops. Now I'm not, whoops, I'm by no means a master in this in this program. No. Whoops, not what I wanted to do. Not what I wanted to do. Ellie, where's the option? Have it done. We did not have exactly the. Oh. No, sorry. Oh my god, sorry, thank you. Ay. Oh, one sec. Yeah. Okay, there. There we go. And then here, and then art to stitch. There we go. There we go. Now I should have the file. Whoops. Good to go. Sorry about that. Okay. Now I'm going to export the design. In this case, very simple design, but the most hardest or trickiest part in this case would be actually doing the art. So drawing it yourself. Even so, I'm going to put it onto my USB drive, and you just have to make sure that depending on the machine you are using, you have the correct file type selected. In this case, I'm using a Brother embroidery machine. Yes. And I am going to use the PES file. And I'm going to name this heart. Okay. Hopefully, okay. Okay. Oops. All right, so now we will move over to the machine, but also just before we go over that, we will show the video of how to embroider and how the machine's working, as well as having vinyl in that one. So I'll just stop that and pass over to the video. All right, so as you can see in the video, that's just how the embroidery was going for a bag that we have completed. That, can you pass me, Chris? Our completed bag, which is our next step, would be sewing, because in this case now you can do the embroidery and as well as the heat transfer vinyl. So in this case, this is a very nice design that we put onto the leather strap to this bag, as well as the finished embroidered design with beads around it on the bag, and as well as the fringe that was done by laser cut and the fabric itself laser cut, all to create a very, very nice bag. All right, the bag. Okay. All right, so in this case, we have a second bag, which we'll show you just quickly, just before we get to sewing on the bag, because the how to do the heat transfer onto this, as well as how the embroidery setup works. Yeah, good. So we'll just switch to that now momentarily. As you can see in the video as well, there is the vinyl cutting, which was the cut for something, say, like this.
Which one is it?
Correct, James.
I'll be doing it on my phone. Oh, shoot. Okay, we're good. So. Okay, so we're gonna try this again, everybody. And there we go. You can see me from that computer. So when you're doing embroidery, you are going to spray an adhesive onto this piece, and then stick it onto that. You're gonna take this piece, put it in here, and lock it into this, okay? Then you are going to take this and slip it underneath and click it into this little feature here, where I'm going to turn around my camera here so that you can see it. You're going to clip it right here. Yeah, they can see. Yeah, they can see both of them if they want. So you're going to load your thread and load the file onto here and do everything there, and just like the video did before. And then can you switch my camera to this? Okay. So this is also an embroidery machine. It's a different type, I believe. Yes. And our 3D printer, you have your panel here, your options down there, USB port, your feeder back here. And then this is our lovely vinyl machine, where you have your mat right here and you slide it in here and you load it into, you plug in your laptop, your computer, or you could do with a Cameo 4, you can do Bluetooth, which is something I really, really love. This is your little blade, and you can pop this out and clean it on occasion by pushing this down. This is a wonderful machine. You can make thousands and thousands and thousands of items, and wonderful for great for crafters that are just looking to start their business. And those are all our machines. We are going to switch over to Rhonda now to show you the sewing part of the bag. That when it's complete, it should look like this. So Rhonda, over to you.
Okay. There we go. Hello, everybody. My name is Rhonda, and I'm going to be instructing briefly how to construct the bag once all the pieces are cut and the vinyl is cut and the beads are 3D printed. As mentioned earlier, there were 3 different panels that were cut. There was a front, a flap, as well as the back. So all of these have 2 sides to them, both the velveteen side, which is going to be the side that's showing, and the inside, which is the liner. So you can use whatever materials you have at home. We also strongly recommend recycling materials because that is very environmentally conscious, and we always like to try to be as conscious as possible. Okay, so on that note, I would like to just say happy International Indigenous Day to all my Indigenous peeps from across the globe. Yay. So what we're going to do is what I've done is I have started sewing it together. So the flat piece has been sewn to the back piece, and they've been sewn so that both sides are good side facing each other. And then I sewed around the perimeter. I left this part open so that I can show you how I'm going to be putting the cut leather fringe into the bag. So I'm just going to place this down here. And what I've done was I marked the center of both of these fabrics. You can see I've got 2 dots there. That signifies that it is the middle. I've done the same thing with my leather. So I've got a little Sharpie mark right here. So all I have to do is align my little ticks together so that I can see exactly where the center should be. Probably should put on my glasses. And what we have here is the smooth side facing out. So I want to make sure that the smooth side and the velveteen side are facing each other so that when we flip the bag inside out, this is what you're going to come up with. Now, leather is very new for us Indigenous crafters to be cutting in the laser machine. This is not something that I teach to young people when they're first starting to learn about their culture. I always am careful to teach them the hard way first so that they learn the proper way of doing traditional craft work before they learn the shortcuts. So as it was mentioned before, this laser cutting with the leather is fairly new. I've got this aligned up now. And the only thing I can tell you folks is if you're going to choose the laser cutter to cut your leather, I hope you like mushroom soup because it smells a little bit different like mushroom soup. So all my edges are going to be aligned here. And I'm going to use my cute little clamps to keep everything in place when I sew. As I'm sewing along, I just want to ensure if you're going to be using clamps, make sure that you remove the clamps as it approaches your sewing machine needle, because that will pose as a very, very big problem if you happen to sew over the clamps. All right, so we're getting this done rather quickly. The one wonderful thing about cutting hide with the laser cutter is that it will save you some arthritis. And this is one of the things I wish I had been able to use throughout my crafting career, because my hands are very small and delicate. So cutting leather is not always the funnest thing for me to do. All right. So as mentioned before, you can use any type of material that you want. And you can also use this instruction for any type of bag. This does not have to be solely just a drum bag. This can be any type of bag, tote bag, any other type of bag that you want. Okay, so now we're gonna put it into the machine, and we're gonna go really, really super gently with this, because we are sewing leather without a leather needle. So that means we just have to be very, very careful and gentle when we're sewing. So I'm going to have a bit of a lip here that's going to show on the side of the liner, which is fine. So removing as I go, nice and slow and gentle. Once you get to the leather, give your machine the ability to keep up with your stitches. This machine is a little bit of a higher end machine. If you're using a beginner machine, like I said, the motor in these machines are just like car motors. Some of them are faster, some of them are meant to go slower. And I always say, if you know how to drive, you know how to sew. Right, we're nearing the end. Stick this in there. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to take this out. We're going to go ahead and flip this inside out. So when I was sewing the front to the liner, I left a little bit of an opening here so that I could reach my hand in and pull it right side out. Typically what you would want is to have an iron ready to go to press your material. In the interest of time today, we're just going to skip that very important little step. And I just want to make sure that I get my edges sewn together. Before you can sew, you've got to make sure that you pop your entire seam, which means that if you have a tool such as a ruler, you can put the ruler in and just bring it along so that it pops out all of your corners, edges, and seams. Just look at that. We're gonna go all the way around. Once that part is done, you can bring it back into the machine like this. By the way, guys, I can talk and sew all day. So if my trusty team members can give me just a little bit of a signal if I go past my time, I will not be offended. And we've decided to do this workshop in the same manner as a cooking workshop. So we've got already pre-made pieces just to make it look like we're all full of magic. All right, here we go. And I'm just going to give it a nice finishing seam all the way around the perimeter of the bag. Just like that. When I get to the leather again, it's going to be quite a bit of material, so go nice and slow. Try not to stress out your machine. All right, and I'm just going to sew up to the top of the bag. And there we go. Okay, now we've got our fringe on the flap of our bag. And as you can see, we've got the beautiful little beads that were 3D printed in the lab. And just a quick note or suggestion, if you are going to be doing any type of laser cutting on leather, it is more practical and you will have a better finish if you choose to laser engrave on the smooth side of the leather. You can see here when we turn it over, this is the suede side of the leather, and you can see the discoloration there. So best practice will be to use the smooth side of the leather. All right, now the last part we want to do is we want to make sure that everything is all sewn together. It's very important that when we're making a drum bag or any type of craft, that we stay very conscious of our thoughts and our feelings, ensuring that all of the work that we do has a positive energy attached to it. Everything that we do with our hands, we create energy with that. So we want to make sure that we just think about rainbows and unicorn, and maybe some chocolate might help. So these types of things, when we are sewing or creating things to take care of other sacred items, that's the real reason why we have to ensure that we are of good mind and good heart. Those types of things really will make a difference when we use them in real life. Okay, so now what I would like to do is to sew the front to the back. I've got this piece here that is going to be joining the front to the back. And you can see here I've sewn in a piece of leather. This is the strap that's going to go over the shoulder. The strap in its completion will have the design work of the laser cutter. It will also show you design work from the vinyl cutter. And just like when I sewed the front here and I put the leather on there, I made little marks so that I could line up the dots, and it will be a no-brainer for when it comes time to ensure that I have everything in the middle. So this part here has a mark here and here. This is how I know I'm in the center of the bottom of the bag. So all I'm going to do is just see, I'm so silly, I sewed up my dots. So I'm going to have to make new dots. So all I'm doing to make the dots is just lining up my edges, finding the middle, and then taking my Sharpie, which is very permanent. So be very, very careful where you put your mark. And so that mark is going to go just in the middle. So now I know that this is going to go right here. Comme ça. By the way, I won't speak French. That's the only French word I know. So right here. And what I will do is I will start from the center, sew up this way, go back and start sewing this way. So I'm going to keep my stitch very close to the edge. just to give it a nice little finish. You probably should be pinning this. I'm a self-taught sewer. And when I was instructing myself on how to sew, my lessons never consisted of using pins. So here we are. So always ensuring that you have your seams popped so that you don't lose material when you're sewing up your bag. And this should bring you fairly close to the top. And I'm just gonna leave this open because I will have to put the leather strap in the top once we're finished. Always back stitch so your stitches don't come undone. So there is one side off to the other now. And then when we're all done sewing, it's always important to remember to cut your threads. All that hard work will be wasted if you have threads hanging out. It will look unpolished. All right. Moving right along here. Where's my bobbin? Almost out. All right. And that stitch. Oh, yeah, I ran out of bobbin. Awesome. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch this out very, very quickly. And while we do that, we also have some instruction about the drum and the sacredness of the drum. We wanted to initially show something that was cultural, that was relevant to the culture of Indigenous people in North America. And one of the things that we decided on was that the drum was one of the things that was central to Indigenous people all across Turtle Island, which is what we refer to as North America. But because of the nature of the drum being so sacred, we didn't want to do an instruction on the drum itself because we wanted to protect the integrity of the drum. When we do make drums, that becomes a responsibility for us to take care of it in an appropriate manner. So we couldn't guarantee that everyone was going to be taking care of their drums. So we thought it would be great to be able to do a drum bag that would still allow us to be able to show all of the different machines that we use. And it was still culturally relevant. But it is also something that you don't necessarily have to use for a drum. Going to take this out and try to figure out why it's upset with me again. Oh, and my needle just broke. So, as you can see, this is the joy of live broadcasting, especially internationally. So while I change out my needle, also we will have an opportunity to showcase some traditional drumming. Myself and my co-worker Naomi had the beautiful opportunity to sit and drum together out by the Ottawa River here in the capital region of Canada. So that was such a beautiful time to be able to do that. Either of us have much time to be able to drum. We don't have as much time as we would like. So I'm having some technical difficulties here. So what I'm going to do is just talk you through the remainder of the instruction. Now this here, as you can see, is where we have the strap, and we've also got the lip here that we eventually would like to sew the other side of the bag to, which is down here. So it's the same process. I'm going to line up my dots here and here, and that is going to get sewn along here, which will create a nice 3D image for you. Once that's done, then you have a bag. And this bag is going to be an open flat bag, just like this. You're going to be able to have the fringe showing. And then with the other side of the strap, it's going to then just join into the top of your lip. And just like that, voila! Oh, easy peasy lemon squeezy. Hope you enjoyed the sewing portion, and I hope you have a good day.
The big thing.
Yep. All right. So that pretty much wraps up the making of our bag. So we have the two nice bags completed. And then from here, I will just post a link again if you want to access the drive that you has all of the videos of some of the 3D printing and laser cutting happening, as well as a about the drum video where Rhonda explains a bit of the meaning behind it and some information regarding drums and drum bags in that sense as well. But yeah, so thank you for attending. That's pretty much all. You should hopefully now you could create your own drum bag, but it takes a bit of sewing skills and artistic talent for some of the embroidered and vinyl pieces on it. But yeah, that is all that and concludes our workshop today. Thank you.